So what's on the table today?
Okay, welcome everybody. I thought I would try a little new series specifically for new players of Bot War. I thought I would try and pick a race once per month or once per every couple of weeks and talk through um, a little bit about the design of the force and how it's intended to play. And perhaps even go into a little bit about, sorry, moving the camera there, go into a little bit about some of the builds that you can make with the forces. Now, I've decided here to start off talking about Overlords. Now, Overlords, it's quite ironic, I guess, that we start with a non-bot faction for Bot War when we first start talking about this this sort of force style, I guess we call it. Um, but I actually quite like the Overlords, and they might be a bit of a unique one to start off with, but it will help people a lot sort of learning to practice with these because they are a little bit different to how the regular bots work. Now, this is obviously all the models that are in the studio army, but also technically all the models in the force. So there isn't actually that many to choose from at this point, but you know there is a lot to these, and there is a few builds available. Some builds are stronger than others, I think personally, but all of them do have a bit of a focus. Now, I'll start off by going through the stat cards, and if I can do this right in front of the camera, that would be great. So I've got here, first up is Gorg. Now, Gorg is obviously the overall leader of the Overlords. So Gorg, I won't say he's the most powerful, but all of the Overlord characters, the force is really split into two characters. So you've got here like your Overlords, and then you've got their sort of like mutants. So the Overlords are technically like your support characters in the force. They don't really do any fighting. If you see here for Gorg, he's got a ranged attack RA there of 1 and a close attack of 1. So that's really poor. But he does have 4 energy. He brings 4 energy to the force, 7 damage, and he's got some great stuff here. Air support, which is his super ability, which allows him to technically fly. He's got efficient, martial warrior, mind read, and strategist. Mind read and strategist are really strong support special rules. So mind read can potentially make certain opponents miss a turn, and strategists can manipulate your own units to up and down the turn order based on their strategy rating. So really powerful support abilities. And as you can see there, he's 16 points, which is pretty hefty for someone with RA1 and CA1. But it's because those special rules are so powerful. So there is 4 different overlords, and all of them give varying types of support. So Krog here is a force field and strategist. So force field is a more defensive support. Still got 3 energy, so he's pretty strong. Still poor in close attack and ranged attack though. We've got Crom here. Now Crom has the mind read only. Very cheap for an overlord. Still, once again, very supportive type character. And finally here we've got Glug. So Glug here has the disorientate sort of support rule, which can potentially lower the shields of your enemies. So yeah, that's the 4 overlords. So the overlords are really taken as a support choice. I would recommend it 100 points. Maybe I have tried 2 overlords, but I think it's overkill. I think only 1 overlord, depending on what you want to do. Personally, I take Gorg just for that extra energy, and both the mind read, and I think he's the most versatile of them all, even though he is the highest points. But I think if I was taking a different type of force, as you'll see later, I would probably take a different Overlord instead. So, in summary of this part, we've got Overlords, support characters, even though they are like the leaders and probably more on the more expensive side, they're purely for support. Okay? Right, moving on to what I call, should we go the big guys or the Warriors? I think we'll do the Warriors. So the Warriors in Bot War, like these guys are obviously all Kaiju, so they're not really warriors, but there's lots of different types of warriors. Now, I'll keep Gorger and Moore. I'll keep them till last because I see them, and Thresher Lord and Sora. I'll keep them till last because I see them as the big guys. So the warriors here we're pulling out are really these guys here at the front, all these four guys here. Now, the warriors have sort of two ends of the spectrum. You've got the shooty warriors, and then you've got the close attack warriors. Now, the close attack warriors tend to be probably on the same level of resilience as the shooty warriors, which is a bit of a downside for close attack orientated warriors, but they're on the faster side. So they normally operate faster and they normally hit a little bit harder. So they're a bit glass cannony, so if that's even a word. But I imagine most of you who play war games and stuff will understand what that means. So, for instance, you've got these guys here, which are smaller and lighter, but they're faster and they hit pretty hard. Most of these have like rerolls or a double reroll to hit with combat scimitar or pugilist, which is like pretty handy. And some even have like things like I think that's got now I can't even remember, which is terrible on camera. Not remembering my own force. Yeah, so we've got Small Eye, who's combat mace, which gives you extra damage. Removes a shield from your opponent in close attack, which is like really handy. And then we've got combat scimitar for Ripper, combat axe for Deep Sea, so which gives +1 to damage. But as you can see, their Deep Sea's pretty light, but he's got 3 close attack, which, come on, that is pretty devastating on a 4-point model. 3 close attack, which means he's basically rolling 3 purple and a black, just basic. So, and if he puts on Armored Might, I mean, that's even more. So he will blitz most large bots in close attack. Absolutely blitz them. The challenge will be getting into close attack with him before he goes down with only 4 damage. But then you might want to put him with, I think it's Glug with the force field, right? Or Clug, sorry, with the force field. So that's how I'm saying is that it depends how you want to construct your list. I'm probably only going to go into the list that I normally use in here, but as you can see with, sorry for that camera shaking, I'm actually bumping the table, which is making it shake. As you can see here, like you can actually construct a decent close attack list if you use the right Overlord as support. So, for instance, as you see there, Ripper has the close combat scimitar, which allows him to re-roll 2. Once again, he's a bit heftier with 5 damage, but he's only 7 points and he's delivering 3 close attacks plus the black always, which is pretty nasty. And he's got ram attack as well, so he's got a movement of 11 on a ram attack, so he's going to shred stuff. He's going to absolutely shred stuff. Any mid-level warrior bot is going down in one go, on average. Any larger bot is taking a fair bit of damage. So, yeah, pretty nasty. And Small Eye is just a step up again. Once more, removing a shield dice from anyone he's attacking because of the combat mace. Once again, 3 close attack. Like he's just going to rip it. So, and he's got adrenaline. So if he gets adrenaline off in the second round of combat, he's getting an extra D3 worth of combat attacks. So it could potentially be 6 close attack plus a black, plus you remove a shield dice from the opponent. So he's killing heavy bots if he's getting a decent roll with that adrenaline. So you got those guys. That's these guys here. Piranha. Now Piranha is once again not great, but look at that. Pugilist, he's rolling 1 close attack dice. He's still rolling 3 close attack dice plus the black, plus he's only 5 points. So, and he's got ram attack, so he's moving 10 inches into close attack for 5 points. So once again, most warrior level bots are going down with a piranha attack. poetic, I think. So yeah, these 4 guys here at the front, if you can see, they're sort of like your close combat style team if you want to make that sort of list. Now, I'll move on now to the other warriors. Now, these warriors here, like you have got, sorry, I've just taken that off camera. Lockjaw here. Now, Lockjaw is a bit in between. So, Lockjaw has, as you can see here, Lockjaw is pretty hefty on points at 12, but it's because he also has a great ranged attack and a good close attack. So, he's the best of both worlds. So, he's got Pugilist, so he's re-rolling, and he's got nuclear shells, so he's getting some decent punishment with his shooting as well, which is 3 ranged attack. So he's the model that will bridge both types of lists in the Overlords. Okay, and Armored Might as well. So he's probably steers slightly towards the close attack, but Armored Might can also help you defend as well. So it's a pretty good ability. So Lockjaw is sort of stuck in the middle, but he would be an inclusion in my list because I like the nuclear shells. Moving on here, who have we got next? We've got, let's move them out. We've got Hammerhead. Okay, so we're coming down slightly in points. He's still okay at close combat, but you're really paying for the nuclear shells and the ranged attack. So that's the extra points. If you just want to do close attack, then you're not paying many points. But if you want to do ranged attack and close attack, you're paying a lot more points. So Hammerhead here, which is this guy here, stepping on the police car. We've got, yeah, I would take him as well. Adrenaline as well can boost his damage when he takes damage, can heal him back up, which is always really handy for a shooter. Now, the good thing about nuclear shells is you only have to score 1 damage on an opponent, and for the remainder of that turn, they're paying 1 extra energy for everything they do, which can really mess up your opponents. Really mess them up. So you always are picking on models that haven't activated yet that turn with the nuclear shells. So that's a great tactic for Overlords, is to pick on models that haven't activated that turn. It's also a great one to try and pick off a model that could form into a combiner before it forms, because then it can't form, because usually people only stack the amount of energy on those that they need to form up, and the rest is on the core combiner. So you would shoot nuclear shells at one of the limbs of the combiner to remove to make it that the combining activity takes 1 extra energy to form, and will stop it forming, obviously. Goremouth is just a copy, really, of Hammerhead. So having both of those, having 2 lots of nuclear shells, is pretty devastating. So that's Goremouth over here. Now we get to Chomper. Now Chomper takes in a different direction. He doesn't have nuclear shells, but he does have Surge. And as most people who play Bot War know, Surge is pretty devastating. But once again, he's like a jewel. He loses a little bit of health or hit points. So he's down to 5. But he does have a combat axe as well. So that's why he's up to 12 points. Not cheap. So, yeah. Surge is pretty devastating. If you've got an enemy with a lot of cubes that they're going to do something that turn and you get hit with a Surge attack, then you'll take additional damage for every single energy that you have on the card of that model. So if you've got a lot of stuff stacked, if you want to do a lot of stuff on that model, then you could potentially end up the model dying because it's got too much energy on it. So you always got to be careful of surge models when you're playing bot war, and sort of throw a lot into defense against those, because if one gets through and you've got a lot of energy, you're toast. Literally. Okay, moving on. So we thought I'd move on here and show the first of the two sort of general class models, which is Saw here. Now, Saw, lore-wise, is the old champion of Gorg, so still pretty high up in the ranks, but he's the old champion. And Thresher Lord is the new champion. But Saw here, as you can see from the stat card, he is pretty tough in both ranged attack, and his close attack is pretty exceptional with 4. 4 is, I think, the highest close attack outside of a Titan style bot that you can get. And so Armored Might, Adrenaline, and he's got Martial Warrior, so he can use one of each of those, or each of those twice. Well, sorry, one of those twice. Combat Axe gives him +1 damage in close combat again, so he really is more geared towards close attack. Efficient, which we'll go into in a minute. All of the Overlords have efficient. So yeah, pretty nasty for Saw. Now, as I don't really run the close attack list very much, Saw for me doesn't get much of a run, but he's definitely a powerhouse to be reckoned with. The only issue really with a lot of the Overlords is that ram attack is their sort of charged ability to get into close attack, but a lot of the Overlords don't have ram attack. They have Adrenaline, which is more of a second round of close attack boost. So they just keep hitting you until you're dead, basically, and Adrenaline keeps them up and running until that happens. Okay, so we're getting into the next general class type character here, which is Thresher Lord. He's the new champion of Gorg, and there's a bit of rivalry between him and Saw as a result. So Thresher Lord's a pretty cool model. Now, he is a little bit cheaper than Saw at 14 points, so he's actually not bad. Still got a whopping close attack of 4 though, and the Combat Axe, but he doesn't have Armored Might, but he's still got Martial Warrior. So he does actually, if you look here, he does actually strike a bit later as well. Like, he activates a little bit later. Saw's a bit faster, activating on a 3. So, but otherwise, they're pretty comparable. Saw's also a little bit tougher with 7 damage. And that does actually make a big difference sometimes as well. So, otherwise, they're pretty identical. You're really paying the extra 2 points for the extra damage and the extra ability, the faster activation, and the Armored Might. Okay, so moving on to the big guys. Now, the big guys here, so we've got the first... Actually, I'll do Maw first. So Maw is the first of the, what I call sort of the muscle. And he's a lovely model, painted by old Stu. So we got here Maw at 20 points, pretty high. And so we've got, he activates quite late, like most of the big guys. Once more, you can see here with his ranged attack 1, that's not very impressive at all. But 4 close attack is pretty tough. 10 damage is nice with Adrenaline. So potentially, he's lasting a fair while. Combat Axe and Combat Mace. So, yeah. So he's basically removing a shield dice from his opponents, while at the same time adding +1 damage to any damage he does. Iron Skin means that he is re-rolling any damage against ranged attacks. And Obscure, which basically means against ranged attacks, he's getting an extra shield there. So he's got 3 shield. Obscure will give him 4 shield, which is pretty decent, but only against ranged attacks, not in close attack. So quite an interesting character. On paper, he looks pretty strong. You got to be careful though that he doesn't get overwhelmed. And I have had that before, that he does get overwhelmed. So he can't go into every combat unsupported. But in a combat list, I think he would be supported by a few of their smaller shark warriors. I think he would be pretty good. So, like I said, I'll get into efficient in a minute because that's really the key to the whole army. So, that's more. Now, this is probably my favorite overlord of all, which is Gorger. Love this model. Gorger is awesome. Now, I personally think that Gorger is probably the better of the two big guys. Not only is he only 13 points, which is absolute bargain compared to Moore, he's got, and he actually activates slower. He's still got ranged attack 1. He's 1 less close attack. He doesn't have obscure, so he's only shield 3, but he has got 9 damage, which is pretty nice. But 13 points, and most importantly, combat sword. Now, combat sword is a excellent defensive weapon to use with adrenaline, because most of the overlords with adrenaline, they activate adrenaline after they're already in close attack. So you sort of have to take a charge or take an attack from someone else, and then you adrenaline them back. So it's sort of an odd way it works. Like, say, for instance, if a Valiant Ram attacks you, you take that, you tank it, basically, and then you just activate adrenaline and just slap whoever it is down. Anybody. So I always use Gorger with the Green Ooze injection, which I'll get to in a minute, which is an upgrade. But yeah, the combat sword makes your opponent re-roll a dice of your choice. So someone in close attack. So someone close attacks you, they ram attack, they roll like a 3 on the purple dice. You can re-roll that 3 and they get a 0. That makes a massive difference, like a massive difference to the close attack and his ability to tank it. And then you just activate adrenaline and just slap that person out of the way. It's really, really satisfying. It's like forcing your opponent to fluff their attacks while at the same time you just whack everybody. So love Gorger. Now I'll quickly go through the upgrades that you can get for the Overlords, and then I'll get into the overall style of their play. This video is going longer than I expected, so I'm just going to try and speed it up a bit. Right, so Human Snack, 1 use only. It's basically easy. 1 point, repair a damage point at the start of your activation if you wanted to. Handy. I take it if I've got 1 point spare. It's like handy. Now, to me, this is the best Overlord upgrade. Green Ooze injection. It's essentially like a sort of upgraded adrenaline for 3 points. You do have the risk of taking a couple of damage if you roll a blank, but if you don't, it just makes them absolute combat beast. You run this and adrenaline. I mean, you're potentially on someone like Gorger. I mean, you're potentially rolling up to 9 attack dice. That will kill anything in the game. Like, that is really, really good. So yeah, definitely think about Green Ooze injection. For combat armies and shooty style armies for Overlords. So definitely great. Now, extra limb gains a free close attack boost per turn. Very handy if you're running the close attack style force. So I don't usually take this just because I don't have the spare 2 points. But if you're running the close attack style force, especially in a city type terrain where there's lots of terrain and corners and stuff like that, definitely worth it. Mind over matter. Once again, I think I would definitely take this if I have a spare point. It just means that if your Overlord gets engaged in a close attack, you can automatically disengage and get the hell out of there. So it's sort of like a get out of jail free card. So definitely take it if you can, because the Overlord support can be so imperative to the force that you don't want to get him locked into close attack and get killed. Human snack, because there's 2 human snacks you can take. So you can take 2 of these and stack them up if you want to. But yeah, it depends what type of force you want to do. I don't usually. I have taken human snack before, but only one. 6 cents, another. This is like really good. It's actually unique so far to Overlords in the sense that a lot of forces in Bot War, you can't actually move into base-to-base contact with anyone that you can't see at the start of your activation. So you can't move like one activation and then see someone and then move into close attack. You can only move into base-to-base contact with someone that you can't see at the start of your first Sorry. You can't move into base-to-base contact with someone you can't see at the start of your first activation. So it makes a huge difference to how you and this allows you to actually move into base-to-base contact with anyone that's within range. So it makes a massive difference to the game. I know there's probably a lot of people playing out there that you can just move into base-to-base contact with anyone. Well, that breaks the game. You actually can only move into base-to-base contact with someone that you can see at the start of your first activation. So it's very, very important rule in Bot War. So, but this breaks that rule. So it's very good if you're putting on really fast units that can run around corners and just attack people, which everybody else in Bot War can't do. Okay, so just very quickly, I'm trying to get this video in under half an hour. So I'm just going to speed through this last bit, which is probably the most important part. The most important thing about Overlords is that they have really low energy. Like, you don't have a lot of energy. All of these models, being Kaiju, being actually living creatures with cybernetic enhancements, they actually have efficient, which means that they get a free activation per turn. They only get 1 energy each, and that's why you need the Overlords, right? Because the Overlords have up to 3 energy or 4 energy, but everybody else has like 1 energy, as you can see, but they all have efficient. So it's very important that your super abilities that normally would cost 2 energy, you got to understand that they're free with efficient, because efficient says you get 1 activation for free. So you always use your efficient to use for your super ability, because you're saving yourself 2 energy to do that. So just really keep that in mind when you're planning out your turn, is that you use efficient always on your super ability, because efficient is a free activation. So that really brings the balance in with the Overlords and the low amount of energy that they normally get. If you don't have any Overlords, you don't have a lot of boosting power, as in power boost. You can't boost your defenses or your attacks. Excuse me. So definitely put an Overlord in and spread that energy out to where you need the boosts. So everyone else needs to work their super abilities and stuff through their efficient, and just use the energy for boosting and other attacks. So that's really how Overlords play. It in a good way, it can actually make Overlords quite immune to forces that have a lot of surge, because you can't damage if there's not a lot of energy on the models. So, well, you can damage, but you can't get the extra damage from surge. So playing against Overlords are great against models like forces like Electrotriant's drone army, because they have a lot of surge units. It's sort of like quite surge is weakened, because there's not as much energy stacked onto the individual warriors of Overlords. So always make sure that you use the efficient section of your special rule to activate any super abilities in the Overlords. And that's about it. That's a sort of brief overview of the Overlords. And remember, Overlords are for support, You only really need one, I think, in 100 points. You can go to two if you think you need the extra energy, but just bear in mind that you are putting some points into that you're not putting into stuff that can actually do the damage. So the idea is to protect your overlords. You can Gorg's quite good for early attacks or using mind read and blocking combiner forms and stuff like that, which is really good. And then you got your warriors, which are split into two. You've got your close attack, cheaper close attack warriors, and then you got your more expensive close attack and shooty warriors. And then your generals, which are like a step up again. And then you've got your big guys, which really are there to tank a lot of stuff and then fight back. So there you have it. That's hopefully you enjoyed this overview of the Overlords, and I'll catch you guys again soon. Thanks.